Hi, friend. How are you today?
Hey, I'm great. How are you?
No, you can't say great. You have to tell us specifically how you are feeling.
I am feeling hopeful.
Oh, I love that.
How
See,
about you?
not hard. I'm feeling thirsty and
Thirsty for what?
actual water, actual hydration.
Tashira,
Um,
why don't you have your water with
I
electrolyte?
don't. I know, friend. I'm off my morning routine a little bit. And like, I'll sit down and I'll say, okay, I'm just gonna do this thing real quick, and then I'm gonna do my routine. And by the time real quick, I'm just done. So I'm gonna do a hard reset, a control alt delete after we hang up the phone, get some
Mm,
water and hydrate myself. I promise.
okay. I wish I could give you some through the screen, but we're not there yet.
Not quite. But that's good as to today's topic, right? Which in part
Mhm.
is going to be around self-care. So frame it up for us. What are we chatting about, friend?
So we've been chatting a lot about the presidential election, and we are going to continue doing that throughout the next couple months through November.
Yes.
And this is not any different, except this kind of is taking a more wellness, personal spin. And it's how are we staying well through these next months? How do we hope to stay well through these next months? What does well look like for us? And how are we staying well and involved? Because being involved is deeply important to both of us as well.
Yeah. And as we've said in a recent newsletter, that being well is how we sustain ourselves and how movements are sustained. If we're not well, then our personal and our political goals will never be met. So let's jump into it. But before that, let's jump into someone who's very unwell. And that would be Vice Presidential candidate JD Vance. And just all of the ridiculous things he has been saying on the campaign trail and attacking specifically childless Democrats. We knew it was coming, M, but I'll be honest with you. I had not anticipated the attacks around children, especially when, for many people, not having children is not by choice. So I thought they were a little bit smarter and maybe had a little bit more humanity and morality than that. But no, they don't. They don't. He has been quoted as calling he said that people in the Democratic Party, also the media, are a bunch of sociopathic, childless cat ladies. And this is multiple interviews.
And
Like,
then he doubled down. So that's the other thing. Like, this was a quote that was taken from an interview in 2021 when he was running for Senate, speaking specifically about AOC,
mhm.
Mayor Pete, and Kamala, right? So like ironically, also not factually correct, but
We'll get to that.
whatever. We'll get to that in a second. But then this past week he was asked about it and he said it's not the cat's fault or something.
Yeah. Well, he said at times that he was being sarcastic, and I don't know if it was about that or some other hateful thing that he said, but he's like, "I'm just trolling people. I'm not being serious." But you've said this time and time again, and I'm sorry, but I don't know that you're in a position to be trolling people, sir, as you campaign for elected office. I think if there is any time that your word should be taken for face value, now. Now's the time. Now is the time that we gonna believe what you say.
Especially if you're running on this platform about being like a stand-up all-American freedom father.
What do you think about his like consistent dog whistle around when people don't have children? He used the word sociopathic, but that they don't have very strong like leadership capabilities or morality, that they cannot see the world in a nuanced way is what I think he's attempting to say, but much less eloquently.
So I feel like if he had given it, so it's so deeply offensive. I find it completely incorrect, obviously. But the thing that just seems so superficial about it, is the whole point of being an elected or a politician is to work with people who live in your area or in your community or in your country. And there's no way that you can have the same lived experiences as every single person. So the idea that by not having biological children, you can't either vote in the interest of the next generation or care for other people, or is counterintuitive to being a human in elected office. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely, because you should be able to hold multiple things at once.
Right. Like you don't have to have the specific life experience to advocate for that or care about it.
Yeah.
Right? Like you don't have to be in a union to be pro-union.
Yeah, exactly. But here's the thing. He knows what he's doing because he's not even making that point. The point that he's making is that the woke left is a bunch of amoral
Right.
furries who aren't having children, who are, just out here living these lives full of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and they can't possibly be in leadership positions in the government because their lives are falling apart. Oh, also, he said multiple times that when you're childless, you're miserable.
It's so horrific. And pandering to this sector of the voting population. And
Absolutely.
I don't want to, I want to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, even him. I don't necessarily think he believes what he's saying. Um, which doesn't make it better or worse. It just all makes it bad. Right? Like if he
I
actually believed what he was saying, that's horrible and terrible and so
yeah,
judgmental and inconsiderate. And if he doesn't believe what he's saying, but he's saying it just to get votes, that's equally, if not
I think it's
worse.
more. Yeah, I mean, I beg to differ. I think it's much, much worse because you are intentionally causing harm. It is not by way of like ignorance, which already it can be willful, but it is because you are attempting to rile up, rev up a base for personal and political gain. I mean, think about the story that broke in, was it the Times, about his friend? I was tuned into that shit like an episode of Days of Our Lives. Please talk about this to the people. Nim, tell us what happened, girl.
So JD Vance and this person, Sophia, who at the time identified as a lesbian and used she, her pronouns, now identifies as a trans person using they, them pronouns,
Yes.
were very good friends during law school. And if anyone has gone to law school or is law school adjacent, we know this kind of what the flavor of this is. It's they were in the same cohort, they were in the same study group, who knows? And they often disagreed, but were very good friends, like very good friends, like went to each other's weddings,
Yes.
um, studied together, stayed in touch, um, and very tender, right? So they talked about how during parts of their surgical transition, JD showing up with muffins.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe not understanding exactly what they were going through, but trying to be supportive as a friend. And then when JD's book came out, there was a part of the book of gratitude, like thanking people who maybe edited or helped or supported. And JD identified Sophia as a lesbian,
Mm-hmm.
correct?
Correct.
And then later apologized to Sophia
In writing, by
in
email.
writing.
Yeah.
And Sophia said, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. And so they continued on with their friendship, often talking about sociopolitical things, and I imagine also personal aspects of their lives. Sophia currently is a public defender in Detroit. I don't know kind of where their career has taken them. I don't know if they're a career public defender or what. But anyway, doing kind of social justice work from the defense side. Okay. They talked about police. They talked about all of these different things that are very politically charged.
And let me just say this, that a lot of what we know JD Vance's position on Donald Trump truly is, prior to him being named as his running mate and becoming this MAGA Republican, they talked about as well, right? He was not a fan of Trump, and he did not mince his words in these text messages and emails between Sophia and JD Vance.
No, nor about the police.
Yeah.
Like he said something about the police, like, I hate the police. And I can't even imagine. Oh, and apparently he had tangles with the police, which is an interesting, right? So he got picked up or whatever. I don't know. And he said to Sophia, I can't imagine what it would be like to be a Black person.
Yep.
Okay. So fast forward, JD Vance is running for Senate in Ohio in 2021. There's the Arkansas transgender affirming bill for children that is being debated on the national stage. And Sophia asked JD Vance their perspective. And he says, I can't support it. It's bad for children. The data, the research isn't there to support it, which we know is incorrect, by the way. And Sophia says, if this goes through and children can't get affirming care or young people can't get affirming care, people are going to die. And their friendship ends.
Yeah. The only slight distinction I'll make is that JD Vance actually come out publicly, I believe on Twitter, saying that he support the legislation. And that's what prompted Sophia to hit him and be like, yo, like, what is this? Like, you're my friend, I'm trans type of thing. What are you saying? And that's when JD Vance doubled down. They had a slight back and forth. And then JD Vance said, I got a 1:30, I gotta go. And they never spoke again.
And so Sophia leaks these texts and emails to the New York Times, and then they came out Saturday. I believe they were probably in the Sunday Times, but they came out online on Saturday. And so I want to know your thoughts, because I think maybe we have different thoughts about this.
Well, I would imagine that you might come from this from a privacy argument. And I don't. I feel like the Republican Party has a lot to contend with right now, with him being the vice presidential running mate to Donald Trump. And I want to see it all implode. And so from a political standpoint, I feel you're goddamn right. And I am happy that he's being called to task for it.
Yeah, so I agree. I come down on that side ultimately. My initial reaction was just sadness. Like, this is just so fucking sad. Like, this is a real friendship that just imploded because someone was so egocentric and selfish. So that was my initial reaction. Then I had a conversation with my dad, who brought out the privacy argument. And he was saying, like, these were private messages. People do change their mind about some things. He never expected them to go public. But then we went back and forth, and we ultimately agreed that Sophia was doing this for the public good. And that if they had a choice, they wouldn't release. But for some reason, they don't think they have a choice. That they're in Detroit, that's Michigan, that's a swing state, and that potentially, we don't know what the messaging is in Michigan, but that's what I started thinking. Like, maybe they saw some of the things JD was saying, and their experience with him was so different and distinct that they felt like they had an obligation to share.
And also, Sophia had these messages and emails for years, for at least 3 years since he had been in public office and first made the statement about supporting or being on the other side of the Arkansas bill. I don't know if the legislation.
I don't know either.
I'm guessing because it was Arkansas, it was probably against the right.
Against, right. So supporting the ban.
Exactly. And so they could have leaked them then and they didn't. And I think what Sophia recognizes is we are in a moment of crisis as far as the American democracy is concerned. And so the stakes were so high, they probably, and I'm sure it was difficult, right? As someone who you have shared affection and love for over the years, to have to essentially blow up their lives in this way. But the possibility of harm is just way too great. It's way, way too great. And as someone who is a sworn officer of the court, who is a public defender, I don't think they probably wanted this kind of attention, right? They are not in it for the money, in it for the clout. If so, we know that they would not be a public defender. That's not the job to take if you have that kind of personality. But understood that it was important for the greater good. And so I ain't trying to dox you, Sophia, but what's your address? Drop us a line, DM me. Because I got some flowers. I got an edible arrangement on the way. God damn it. Now we need to be celebrating you today. Now, will it make a difference in the Republican Party? I don't think so. I mean, we already know the confirmation bias that exists among MAGA Republicans. But as you mentioned, it is the swing states that now are the most important component of the galvanization and the grassroots movement in this election.
I also wonder that while it's shocking to kind of think this way, because just quite obviously Trump has led a life of lies, that there's something about JD being like pull you up from your bootstraps type of character, that they were like pushing him out as potentially like the more honest, hardworking,
I got that sense.
like the identity of like this like really hardworking guy who came from nothing and went to Yale Law School and made a bunch of money and now is a senator, right? And a writer and all of like this multi-hyphenate, right? And actually what he is a big freaking liar like all of them.
I say him and George Santos probably the best of friends, child. They both be down at the drag show that they proclaim to hate so much. And so I do want to just add that frame to this, that prior to JD Vance's political positions, his outward positions, everything that he did and being a friend, although they had certain political differences, he was respectful and he was kind to his friend. We are in full support of that, right? What people are saying and we agree with is it is a staunch distinction. It is a full 180 from what you say and do publicly. And that is the problem.
So can I bring something else into the chat that, and I'm a little conflicted about doing it because, well, she married him, so. But I have such conflicted feelings about his wife. Like, what are their conversations like at night? She was a partner in a freaking law firm until last week. She's Indian American. Her parents are immigrants. She's from California. Like, I don't know. It's not that opposites can attract. Like that, I have no issue with that. It's just like they're like blatant racist, homophobic tropes.
All I can think of is it is the same Kool-Aid that Amber Rose is sipping. It's the same Kool-Aid that George Santos is sipping as an openly gay man, right? It is the same, just glasses, lens that they are putting on that allows for them to deny parts of who they are in the chase of money and power and political clout. And that's what it has to be, because I don't know what the upside would be. Why would she do this? And we don't know this woman. She could be dealing with a lot of internalized struggles around racism, right? But the optics are so clearly different from the values that he holds that it just does not make any other sense to me. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I want to get back to the childless cat lady thing, because as a childless cat lady on this channel, remember my cat Malika? I realized, and I said this in my newsletter this week, Margo, that me and Kamala Harris have more in common than I realized. It's not being attorneys. It's not our love for like the lesbian power suit with the loafers. It is the fact that we are both childless cat ladies. We are both What did Donald Trump called her? A radical left-wing lunatic. We're both that, evidently. And we also are both very hysterical laughers. And the fact that that is where they have kind of couched their criticism of her just demonstrates how they will pull any and everything out of thin air in order to denigrate this woman's character. We haven't even gotten to the substance of any of her policies. I mean, that's all lies, obviously, the things that they're saying about her. It is just about how she looks. It is about how she laughs, getting back to those kind of hysteria tropes that women have faced over the years. And now her not being a mother. And again, as someone who does not have biological kids, I feel a need to say the point that you've already made. Number one, it's a lie about her. She does have stepchildren. She's a bonus mom, and she's been very instrumental in raising those children, as their biological mom has said time and time again. But also in that example, we mother in many ways, and being maternal is not conditioned upon having biological kids or just being a woman. So let me say that as well. There are many ballroom mothers out there right now who are mothering their ballroom kids. I don't mean ballroom dancing. I know Margo knows what I mean in the LGBTQ community. And there are many gay uncles, gunkles, as we call them, who are mothering their nieces and nephews. So it's beyond gender, it's beyond having biological kids. Last thing I'll say is, though, a lot of motherfuckers who have kids should not. A lot of people that should just not have been parents. So can you talk about that, Margo? Because under this entire analysis is this implicit logic, which is so flawed, which is all parents are great parents.
Well, okay, so there's that, right? This assumption that by birthing a baby, that experience and raising that baby into a child and hopefully an adult makes you eligible for public office. It's like it makes you eligible to do Kegels. Like, it's just, but can I just say something else? And then I'll talk about being a parent, because being a parent is not for the faint of heart, and not everyone should do it. And people's responses to it are also different and distinct, like every experience we have as humans. But Vice President Harris, we don't know why Vice President Harris didn't have her own biological children. But one hypothesis is that because she was so committed to her public service, and that she, for whatever reason, didn't think she could have it all, because we can't fucking have it all. So she committed her life. Also, she raised her niece.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, I mean, not like her mom, her niece has a mom. Mina has a mom who,
Okay.
but they were a very tight-knit family. Like Mina's mom was very, very young when she had her.
Oh, I didn't know that. And
Yeah,
Mina's
very
mom
young, like
is
maybe a
doctor.
teenager.
So, and Mina's mom is a doctor, right?
Lawyer too.
She's a lawyer too. So then, yes, of course. So I'm just thinking about all the ways that family would have had to stand in the gap and support over the
Yes.
years. Yeah.
And Mina's stepfather is not her biological father. I don't know. So Mina's parents have been
Okay.
married for a long time, for like
Okay.
26 years or something, but Mina's is like 40 or 30 something.
Gotcha. Okay, gotcha.
Okay. So I just think it's so strange how they criticize her record and criticize her lack of parenting. Like, how could she have had her record and been a parent in the way that they expect women to show up to parent?
Yeah.
Like, she
So
can't
because
homestead and be AG. You can't be like nursing and making cinnamon buns for your husband and laying down while you're litigating a narco case.
so you're saying you can't be a trad wife and a U.S. senator, I think, second Black woman to hold the position. It might be kind of hard to do both. And this is where I think Republicans have to be careful, Republican women in particular, who are part of this MAGA and Christian nationalist contingent, is that it's a slippery slope. It's a slippery slope to get to what you just said, and women shouldn't be in politics because they should be at home having babies. And so if you were someone who cares about women in leadership and someone who cares about women having equal pay, I mean, all of these things are very hard to be Republican and believe in truly. But let's say you were just a good old fashioned Bush fiscally conservative Republican. Aligning yourself with this version of the Republican Party is going Gilead and Handmaid's Tale fast. Real quick.
So I think it's just so odd. I that's the only word I can describe it, right? Criticizing people for their reproductive choices, assuming that people are making choices that they have no idea. And that's something, I mean, you and I are of a big age. We talk about that a lot. We both have very close friends who have struggled deeply with infertility and family members. And so the idea of parenting as just a choice that you make or don't make is just not true. It's just not true. So there's that. Then there's this idea that having children and showing up as a mother, there's one way to do it. And then that you have to be a woman and a biological woman. That's another thing. And that you have to birth that child. I mean, it's all so crazy and just so, I don't even want to give voice to it because it's not true.
It's not true, and it's scary, but part of me, like I said, with Project 2025 is actually happy that they're saying some of these things out loud, because that is how they truly feel. And I think one of the reasons why some Republicans have enjoyed Donald Trump is because they say he's not the typical Republican. He's saying the thing, he's not playing politics. He's not trying to be politically correct. So what you're saying is he should have room to be racist and homophobic and transphobic and misogynistic. Got you.
And
Your time.
I mean, in the last week, he said so many incoherent things. One, he said that if people vote in this election, they no longer will have to vote. So he's like actually talking about overturning democracy again. And then he said that if Harris wins, he's going to assume, no matter what, that the election was rigged.
Oh yeah, they've all been talking about that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that Republicans are like falling in line.
Uh-huh. Yeah, child. Yeah. So again, I think I don't know a lot about sports, but I oftentimes hear in professional sports that so and so team, they beat themselves. I think this is a time where obviously we have to have a very strong offense, but I also think that they can have a weak offense and help us to come out on top because their strategy is just all over the place. And last night, none other than Megan Thee Stallion opened up the rally for Kamala Harris in Atlanta in front of 10,000 people, Margo. And now is the time where I'm just going to remind the people, what did we say the possibility was if Biden stepped down as far as the nominee is concerned? That people would have something to get excited about. And that is what we're seeing. Obviously, we have about 100 days to go towards the election. And so we are not going to release our feet off the gas, but we just have to ask that everyone stay motivated, stay excited. Anything else before we get to self-care and how we sustain this moment?
I think it's kind of digging into what works for you. So if you care about this, which you probably do if you're listening to us, think about things that you can do. Is it talking to extended family? Is it getting out the vote? Is it donating? Is it building coalitions? Is it there's just so much we can do. Is it talking to young people? I had a really good conversation today with a good friend of mine from college who is helping us put together, hopefully, an event in New Hampshire and Maine. And she had this idea of getting like really young people there, teenagers who can't vote.
Yeah.
But getting them excited about 2028.
It's a long-term strategy. It is a marathon, not a sprint, as you keep saying.
And so, however you care, we all have a place to play.
Absolutely. Friend, speaking of self-care, before we get there, let's just talk about what we have coming up in September, which was a radical dream of ours that has come to fruition. We are going to be in New York during none other than New York Fashion Week on September 8th. We will be down at Fashion File hosting our first New York live taping. Are you excited? I know you are. I know you are. I know you are.
I am so excited. I am so excited. And it just feels deeply in alignment.
In many ways, given that we know so many of you all are in New York, our audience, whether you all tune in on social media, on YouTube, or you listen weekly, thank you all for your support. We hear your calls loud and clear to be in community. We said this year was going to be our year of a world tour, and can't stop, won't stop, damn it, okay? And this time we are going to be in New York again on September 8th. Time and more details are coming. If the tickets have been released, drop down the description box and go ahead and grab yours. But more importantly, now is the time to also get on our email list because we want you there, and this event will definitely sell out.
Absolutely. And it's the location is just so prime. It's in, I don't even, I can't even describe the space, you guys.
Narnia.
Narnia. I mean, we will be surrounded by beautiful luxury goods and beautiful natural sunlight in a downtown brick building with a DJ and light bites and cocktails and mocktails, and we can dress up or we can dress down and you can go shopping. I mean, the whole thing. It's going to be so fun. And while you don't have to be big age to go, it's during the day. It is not at night. Intentionally, so that we all bring, me especially, our best energy for it.
So we will see you all there. We can't wait.
So one of the deep commitments Tashira and I hold on this platform is talking about ways to stay well during this time in our lives or this moment in time. I think kind of both and. And we're talking a lot about the election, not only because of the candidates, but also because of what's at stake, including our democracy. And if you're a person who identifies as a woman, your rights to your own body. If you believe in immigration, if you believe in inclusiveness, if you believe in social services, right? All of these things are at stake in this election. And we don't know what's going to happen, right? We have to sit with that unknown. So we have to stay well. I also would be really remiss not to mention kind of the global tragedies that are happening constantly and the news feed where we see all of that. Okay, so we're inundated with information. We're inundated with people's opinions. We're inundated with the stress of the world. And we need to stay well. We have no choice. We have to. And so one of the things that we like to do is share some tips, not that we know, but kind of some ideas that we have to share in community.
Yes. And we will be sharing these over on social media. Make sure you are following us on IG and also TikTok, and you are tuning into our YouTube shorts. And also, these tips went out in our newsletter. So again, make sure you sign up for that. And we wanted to share with you all some real practical things that are keeping us going in hopes that they inspire you. We always say that self-care does not have to cost anything. It does not have to be a grand trip out of the country. It shouldn't take a passport. It can be these small acts that pay great dividends. And so Here are some things that we are doing. The first thing that I actually did not put on this list, friend, but I have to bring up now is I'm committed to having a lot of sex. No, I'm serious. So my fiance and I was like, what if we had sex every day this week? Now, I'm at a big H that has not happened. It's Wednesday, but we got like 2 out of 3 days down. So we just got to keep it going. And I feel like energetically.
This reminds me of something. There was maybe like a sex. Someone wrote about trying to have sex every day for 30 days with their partner in the New York Times and got vertigo and and like was so sick one night, but like still did it.
Okay, so that would be the opposite of caretaking. We're not like, with a serious,
Okay, but are you
issue.
like hours or is it like
No. And see, here's the thing too, right? I encourage everyone to expand their notion of sex and intimacy. This is a side note, but let's just have this pleasure chat real quick, Margo, because I hope people understand that sex is not just like penetration,
no,
right?
right.
It's not just intercourse in one way. So it's playtime in a lot of different ways that's physical and intimate and loving and caring and passionate. And I'm committed to it because I may have to leave the country if Kamala doesn't win in November. And I have to step into my boldness, my queerness, and my pleasure right now. Margo, our lives depend on it.
Wait. So when Josh and I have coffee in the morning, can I consider that sex?
Josh is going to say no, and I'm going to ride with my friend on that.
So pleasurable and it's cute and it's intimate. That's what you told me.
It's pleasurable, and I love that for you, but it is a different type of intimacy, friend.
Okay. I was just clarifying because you're like, it's playtime, it's intimate, it's
Okay,
anything.
yeah. I thank you for the challenge. Not the same but different.
Okay. Okay, you're committed to having a lot of sex.
A lot of sex. Okay, what about you?
This week, I woke up and my face had totally broken out.
Stress.
And I was like, what is going on? So it's either stress or I've had too much ice cream. But I think it's stress. Or it's like this like excitement stress.
Yeah.
And so I'm really committed to trying to keep my nervous system in check and kind of stay calm and grounded while also kind of capturing some of that energy that I haven't felt in a long time.
Can you tell them about that stuff you spray on your feet before you go to bed?
Guys, I have some absorption issues, and so I spray magnesium spray on my feet. Magnesium helps with deep sleep. Look, you all know I'm committed to wellness in a different way than Tashira is. And I don't know if Tashira is making fun of my magnesium spray because we were just talking about sex.
Friend, I'm not. It's just your routine at night is very interesting to me. Imagine walking in the bathroom. I see you putting a tincture under your tongue and spraying stuff on your feet. Like it's just a very interesting routine that I thought might.
So I brush my teeth, I wash my face. I double wash.
Okay, I love that. Yes, me too.
Yeah, my toner, my oil, my 2 oils, my cream, my night cream, my eye cream, stuff on my hands. Then I spray the magnesium spray on my feet and on my stomach. The stomach is, I just add that. Then I have this tincture that helps with digestion. And sometimes if I'm a little anxious, I'll take a melatonin tea. And I have been sleeping so well, friend.
Friend, I love this. In all seriousness, what you're describing is a caretaking practice at night that I think really sets us up, and you are such a morning person. I wonder if part of that for you is your practices at night.
And I'm also just so regulating my nervous system and like committing to all the things that we know are important,
Yeah.
but getting enough water, eating well, sleeping well, moving. The movement part has been hard for me lately. But like not losing sight of that when I get really excited about whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, I've been off my morning routine and I feel it. So That's a good one. Another
What
one for
else?
Another one for me that I've been doing is, and we kind of touched on this before, a timeline cleanse.
Mhm. Can you
So
talk specifically about what that means for you as someone who is very engaged on social media and follows a lot of people?
yeah, so I had already started the process of let's talk about maybe YouTube, because that also has a timeline, a way that people don't always really give credit or credence to. There's a lot of information that comes at you on all of these platforms. But I'd already began unfollowing some people who I just didn't feel like had a lot of substance and things to share that were helpful or mindful or intentional. And so, and unfortunately, that includes some of those fashion creators that are doing a lot of kind of fluff content that just no longer resonates with me. And I may be in that category for some people, and I respect that. But for me, there's a distinction that I try to make between what I do and things that are a lot more superficial, and especially that are kind of around just a bunch of hauls and unboxings. That's not helping me at this time. It's not fulfilling. So I'm seeking more fulfillment in all ways in my life, but especially in what's coming down my timeline and or my feed. So if I see something that just doesn't seem to serve a purpose, it's not inspiring, it's not creative, it's not helpful, I'm just unfollowing. I'm unfollowing. And when I do follow someone, I am looking at who else is being recommended to me and if they also provide that energetic kind of burst that I feel like I need right now. And other than that, I'm also just practicing, I think, much better habits around my phone. You know how you get the alerts? Well, you can get the alerts if you have an iPhone on how much screen time you've had. And last week, last Sunday, or this just past Sunday, today is Wednesday at the time of us filming this, I got an alert that my screen time was down by 49%, which is huge for me.
Yeah, well, it's huge for anyone. That's
Huge.
50%.
Okay, because also what happens, friend, and you know this because we're at big age, I start to get tendonitis here. And so I physically feel the difference if I'm scrolling too much. And so just divorcing myself from online content, knowing that I can get my news other places, enjoying reading again, reading the news, reading books, reading 10 pages a day, tracking those types of things has been helpful. Timeline cleanse, unplugging.
I love that. So another thing I'm doing, and really intentionally so, is time blocking in month increments. So what that looks like for me is I mean, and it's all flexible. I mean, but I've already planned out my September in
Nice.
terms of like what days I'm working. So what days I'm working on the podcast, what days I'm working on my consulting, what days am I working on my class, what days um am I doing this consulting project we're doing together, right? And so it helps me with my anxiety because I have so much stuff up in the air, but
Yeah.
also knowing like, oh no, I have, 20 hours set aside in September to do that.
That will be helpful for me too around my travel schedule, which you
Hmm.
know has been a struggle for me.
Yeah. So that's been really helpful. And then planning for rest and fun. Like specifically, right? So what does that look like? For me, that looks like travel, right? Or it looks like a dinner reservation, um, maybe going wedding dress shopping with you, right? So specific things that I can look forward to before the election.
Ooh. Okay, you're preaching today. I'm actually going to do all of that because what I also recognize is that because my travel schedule is so intense, actually blocking off on my calendar those like maybe days before or days after as a buffer to just get
Mm,
in alignment could be really helpful outside of obviously planning for fun. So thank you for that.
of course.
The other thing I'm doing, friend, is getting even more active and paying attention to what is happening on the local level, local political races and candidates, also local grassroots movements. And I know these are tips around self-care during this time, but for me, it's actually helpful to feel a little less overwhelmed by being in community.
Completely. And so these are just things that like we're thinking are going to be helpful for us. For some people, tracking movement, food, water is stressful. Don't do it
Yes,
then,
yes.
right? For some people, scheduling is more stressful than it's helpful. And for other people, it's really worth it. And so I think it's really important to be intentional about these next couple of months and how you know for yourself that you're going to be better off with some of these extra buffers.
Absolutely. And when you mentioned tracking food, sleep habits, etc., that reminded me that another thing is really important is walking.
Mm.
And there are walking meditations that you can do that I have done in the past. I simply just get up and move my body outside of this office that you all see me in all the time. This is my life. You know, these four walls, even though I have the flexibility to work at home, is where I am 90% of my workday. And so moving and feeling a little bit less isolated also by being outside is something that I really want to invest in.
That's such a good point. And one more thing for me that I just recently did this week and I'm so excited about is, I've been going, this, I've been going back and forth about whether to invest in a designated workspace outside my home.
Uh,
And I've felt so much conflict about it because you all know kind of getting co-working space when you're paying for it for yourself is very expensive. Um, and I've visited a lot of different places. They're all kind of not quite right for different reasons, mainly the cost. And then I found one finally this week where I can go to this co-working space about 2 miles from my home 8 times a month. And so it's been really nice. I've gone twice this week already. And I sit in the quiet room and then I reserve the phone booth to take my calls. It's just nice to be around people, even if I'm not talking to anyone.
If you are in the DC metro area, you know we love the Mark. So the Mark might be a recommendation for you. And for sure, I want to take your lead on that. I'm not in DC, so getting to the Mark on a weekly basis is a little bit hard because of traffic, but I want to find something maybe in North.
It just feels good to like get dressed and get out of the house.
And that's my thing too, like having the consistent motivation to put your best foot forward every day and like face your day with some intentionality, I think helps when you get out of the house.
Totally.
All right, you all, sound off. Let us know, what are your self-care practices during this time? How are your practices around wellness and healthy habits going to help to sustain you? And we just gonna quote Kamala. She says that we gonna fight. And when we fight, what do we do, Margo?
We win. And say it to my face.
You got something to say? The real hero, though, or the people behind her, like, oh my God, I want to be their friend.
When we fight, we win. I just want them to debate so bad.
Woo! It's gonna happen. I mean, he's now being taunted, and he doesn't have his ego. He's a megalomaniac. He doesn't have the ability to not respond, and she is going to just make him look like the utter bumbling fool that he is.
And so people can have all sorts of opinion on prosecutors, but one thing they are good litigators. And so
she knows that about herself.
She knows that. She's not afraid.
She's going to tear him apart, and I'll be there watching with popcorn. So. All right, last thing we'll say, though, is that we are taking some time off this month. Don't fret, you will not be left without content. We want to practice what it is we are preaching. So we'll see you soon, and don't forget to grab your ticket when it is available for the Fashion File event during New York Fashion Week.
Thanks all.
Thanks for listening to Justice. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to learn more about our podcast, be sure to check us out on our website at justicepodcast.com. You can also reach out to us there if you want to be featured on the show, or if you have a business or a product that you think would be a good fit for our audience. Thanks again for listening.